One of the most unforgettable characters from Narnia is undoubtedly the eldest Pevensie sibling, Peter the Magnificent. And I'm not the only one who thinks so. His heroic journey in the beloved books and movies speaks for itself. Today, we're diving deep into Peter's life and story, from his first journey to Narnia to the conclusion of his incredible adventure. Peter Pevensie was born in London in 1927. He was the eldest of 4 siblings, 1 year older than his sister Susan, 3 years older than his brother Edmund, and 5 years older than Lucy. In the late summer of 1940, when Peter was 13, the German Luftwaffe launched a relentless bombing campaign over London, now infamously known as the Blitz. Peter and his siblings were evacuated to a large countryside mansion, the home of an elderly professor named Diggory Kierke. The mansion was rumored to be magical, and during their stay, Peter and his siblings stumbled upon an enchanted wardrobe that would change their lives forever. Early on, Lucy claimed that the wardrobe was actually a portal to a magical world called Narnia. At first, Peter dismissed Lucy's claims about a magical world as mere childish fantasies, but while hiding in the wardrobe with his siblings, he discovered it was real, a snow-covered, enchanted kingdom. On their first day there, they followed Lucy to the home of her friend, Mr. Tumnus, only to find it ransacked and learn that he had been captured by the White Witch, a tyrant who kept the land in an endless winter. Outside the cave, the children encountered a large beaver, who, speaking urgently in a hushed voice, asked them to follow him to his shelter. There, the beaver mentioned a name that would forever leave a mark on Peter: Aslan. This moment marked the beginning of something that would change their lives forever. At the beaver's refuge, Mr. and Mrs. Beaver revealed that the children were in grave danger because the White Witch feared a prophecy foretelling the end of her reign and the breaking of the eternal winter if 4 humans were to occupy the thrones of the castle. Although the beavers planned to take the children to the spiritual leader Aslan for help, Edmund's sudden disappearance, seemingly influenced by the White Witch, complicated everything. Determined to rescue him, they embarked on a treacherous journey through snowy landscapes that soon began to thaw, signaling the weakening of the witch's power. Later that same day, the children were visited by a mysterious figure who gave them gifts. Peter received a golden-hilted sword and a shield adorned with a brilliant red lion. These gifts, they were told, would prove essential for the challenges ahead. By the end of the day, they arrived at the Stone Table Hill, where Peter became the first to glimpse the Great Eastern Ocean, a vast and shimmering expanse of water. The most pivotal moment came when Peter met the great lion, Aslan. He was the first to speak with him and received a warm welcome to the camp. Aslan led Peter to a hilltop, where he pointed out, in the distance, the place where Peter would one day reign as High King, the majestic castle of Cair Paravel. However, their conversation was abruptly interrupted by an attack from the White Witch's secret guard, led by a fearsome wolf. Aslan ordered the soldiers not to intervene, instructing Peter to face the wolf alone. Though nervous, Peter drew his sword and charged forward. After a brief but fierce fight, the creature lay defeated at his feet. For his bravery, Aslan granted him the title Sir Peter Wolfsbane, making him the first recorded member of the prestigious Order of the Lion. The day was filled with significant events. Edmund was rescued by a raiding party and brought back to Aslan's camp. Aslan negotiated Edmund's release, as he was under threat from the White Witch, and the kingdom's army moved their camp to the fords of Baruna. During the march, Aslan had a private conversation with Peter, discussing their strategy for the impending battle against the witch's forces. He instructed Peter to be ready to lead the army in his absence, though he did not elaborate further. That night, while the army slept in the new camp, Aslan was sacrificed on the stone table. By dawn, the witch's army marched to face the kingdom's forces in what would later be known as the First Battle of Baruna. Peter courageously took command as general, leading the charge in a decisive clash between good and evil. Peter fought valiantly alongside his allies, but the unexpected arrival of Aslan, accompanied by reinforcements, turned the tide of the battle. In a short time, the witch's army was defeated, and the White Witch herself fell before Aslan. 3 days later, King Peter the Magnificent and his siblings were crowned in the Grand Hall of Caer Paravel, fulfilling an ancient prophecy and ushering in a golden era in the year 1000 of Narnia's history. During his 15-year reign, Peter tirelessly worked to restore the kingdom's glory. He led military campaigns against the remaining followers of the White Witch, sailed aboard the ship Splendor Hyaline to the Forgotten Islands, forged an alliance with Archenland, and established diplomatic relations with the southern lands. In the year 1014, Peter led a campaign to secure Narnia's northernmost regions, defending them from the giants that roamed the area. Under his reign, the kingdom reached an extraordinary level of peace and prosperity, so much so that this period became known as the Golden Age. During this time, a report came in about a white stag spotted near the Lantern Waste. The kings and queens decided to embark on a hunt for it. On their journey, they came across a mysterious iron post embedded in the ground, something that felt strangely familiar. As they continued, the trees began to change, their branches feeling as soft as fur, and before they knew it, they were back in the real world, stepping out of the wardrobe. No longer adults, they had reverted to being children. In the world of Earth, it was still 1940, and only a few minutes had passed since they disappeared. A year later, in the fall of 1941, Peter and his siblings were waiting to board a train to school when another magical portal opened, transporting them back to Narnia once again. Although the world had changed and grown, it still carried a familiar air. Peter was the first to realize they had returned, not to the kingdom they once ruled, but to a far older era. There, they encountered 2 foreign soldiers trying to drown a small dwarf named Trumpkin. After driving the soldiers away, Trumpkin explained that a new chapter in Narnia's history was beginning. Over 2,000 years had passed in Narnia since Peter and his siblings had left. In that time, the land was invaded by humans from a distant land, forcing the original creatures of Narnia into hiding. Under the rule of a usurper named King Miraz, a rebel prince named Caspian X gathered an army of loyal allies to fight against the invaders. It was Caspian who used a legendary horn to summon Peter and his companions back to the magical world. Caspian's army was under siege at an ancient sacred site known as Aslan's How, built over the stone table, and a messenger was sent to guide Peter and the others there as quickly as possible. The journey was perilous, and Peter made mistakes as their leader, doubting Lucy's accounts of seeing signs from Aslan. However, Peter eventually had his own encounter with Aslan in a meeting at dawn in the forest. After this meeting, Aslan sent Peter and Edmund to join Caspian, while Lucy and Susan stayed behind. Upon arriving at Aslan's How, Peter and Edmund found Caspian fighting for his life against 3 foes: a black dwarf, a werewolf, and a sorceress. Without hesitation, the brothers intervened, defeating the attackers and saving Caspian. Shortly after, Peter, Caspian, and a council of allies convened to strategize against the invading army. Despite being significantly outnumbered, they resolved to challenge the enemy leader, Miraz, to single combat, with Peter representing Narnia. The duel was cut short when Miraz was betrayed and killed by one of his own men, sparking a massive conflict that would later be known as the Second Battle of Baruna. Though chaotic, the tide of the battle turned in Narnia's favor when the trees of the forest, awakened by a mystical force, arrived as reinforcements. Eventually, the kingdom's forces cornered the invaders by a nearby river, forcing them to surrender. Victory was declared by the 3 leaders of Narnia. That same day, Peter knighted Caspian, granting him a place in the Order of the Lion. The following day, an official proclamation declared Caspian the new king of Narnia. 5 days later, Aslan led Peter, his siblings, and the remaining invaders to a clearing near the fords, where a magical doorway served as a portal back to their own world. In a private moment, Peter and Susan were told that their time in Narnia had come to an end, while Lucy and Edmund would still have more adventures. With heavy hearts, Peter led his family through the portal, leaving the magical world behind, at least this version of it. Over the next 8 years, Peter lived a quiet and conventional life. He completed his education and studied under the guidance of an old mentor, Professor Kirke. In 1949, he reunited with a group of friends known as the Seven Friends of Narnia to reminisce about their shared experiences. During this gathering, they witnessed a vision of Tirian, the last prince of Narnia, appearing in distress. Before the vision faded, Peter managed to communicate with him, marking a historic moment as the first direct interaction between dimensions. Convinced that Narnia needed them once again, the group devised a plan to recover a set of magical rings buried long ago in a friend's garden. These rings would be used to send Eustace and Jill back to Narnia. Disguised as workers, Peter and Edmund successfully retrieved the rings and brought them to the train station, where they planned to meet the others and board an incoming train. As the train approached, Peter noticed it was rounding the curve at an alarmingly high speed. But by then, it was too late. In a tragic accident, Peter, his siblings, excluding Susan, the other friends of Narnia, and the Pevensie's parents all lost their lives in the crash. And so, in 1949, at the age of 22, Peter Pevensie's life on Earth came to an end. But his story didn't stop there. After Aslan called the stars and closed the chapter on Narnia, Peter and the other friends of Narnia stood at the doorway of the stable, gazing out at Aslan's country, the true and greater version of Narnia. Here they were crowned once more, destined to reign as kings and queens for all eternity. Let me know in the comments what other topics you'd like to see covered on the channel, and remember, if you enjoy this type of video, the best way to support me is by leaving a like, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell. See you in the next video.